Welcome to Digital Media University with Kevin Duggan.
Hi, my name's Kevin Duggan. This is Digital Media University, and we're looking at creating an interactive website using Drupal Gardens today. But before we get started, I want to go over some basic things about the web. One of them is just the content management system itself, which is Drupal Gardens is made from a suite of software called Drupal, which is very similar to WordPress. It's called the content management system. And the big thing about a content management system is it has a database. It has a brain. That makes it different than websites maybe 10 or 15 years ago, where if you wanted to have a database with a website, it would cost a good amount of money to hire programmers, and there'd be people involved. So today what you have is a software like WordPress, which is a content management system. It has its own database. You have Drupal, you have Joomla. There's hundreds of them. The most popular ones are WordPress, Drupal, Joomla. WordPress, of all the websites there are, I think about 65% are created with WordPress. A lot of those would be like blogging sites and things like that, where you need a database because you have things like threaded discussions, and you have to be able to build relationships between things. So WordPress is probably about 65% of what you see on the web. Drupal is only about maybe 6, 7, 8, 9% of what you see on the web. But Drupal is, some people might argue it, but as far as being a content management system, Drupal is more of a hefty, it's more scalable. Maybe it would be used more by corporations and things like that. The White House uses Drupal. Drupal is just layers of software. The top layer would be what you see, which would be the HTML and CSS. Then there'd be PHP software below that, which is the software that is going to communicate what's on the top. Say you put an input in, say my name's Kevin. Well, PHP is going to send that information down to the layer below it, which is going to be your database, a SQL database usually. And the great thing about these type of content management systems is they're free. They're open source. So we're using Drupal Gardens, which is the online version of Drupal. Just like if you go to WordPress.com, you're using the online version of WordPress. So I've used both, and I prefer Drupal Gardens because you can really customize the site using Drupal Gardens, where you're not able to manipulate as much with the WordPress.com, especially for people who are just starting out. So one thing about Drupal, when you're thinking about the internet and you're thinking about the way it's set up, people a lot refer to client-server relationship, meaning like the server, you're in a restaurant, and the server is coming out of the kitchen with a plate of food, and it goes to all the clients. So another way of referring that, it'd be like, here's a big hosting company, maybe GoDaddy or whoever. They have they have big computers in there that store all these websites. And you make a request on your computer for an address or whatever. It goes there and comes back. So one thing I want to go over is just the early days of the internet, which when the internet was in its infancy, which isn't even that long ago, to tell you the truth, in its real infancy, because it's really still in its infancy now. It's 15 years old or whatever. So what you had when it first started out was very static pages, nothing moving, no mouse overs, just using HTML. And the HTML would divide the page into blocks, columns and rows. And it was all very static. And all the computers and different browsers were all interpreting. One page would get interpreted a whole bunch of different ways, which was really making it painful for people who were designing websites. So the next thing, as we go up the evolutionary scale, was they wanted to add some interactivity. There was a great browser out at the time. It was called Netscape. And, it had a lot of the browser market. Probably like about 85% of people on the internet would use Netscape. And what happened was they wanted interactivity. So they developed a programming language called JavaScript. And this is what would give you all the mouse overs, all the interactive features that brought up the HTML to a new level, which they call DHTML. So next thing is we go into CSS. I'm eliminating a few things up the ladder of evolution or whatever. But eventually today what we're at is we're at CSS and XHTML. And what CSS is, and they're two separate things, two separate documents. And what CSS is cascading style sheets. And what that does, XHTML is still dividing your site into blocks, but the CSS is responsible for how big that block is, how height, width, colors, everything that goes inside of it. And it's a lot more exact than when you went back to, it's way more exact than what we originally had with HTML. So cascading style sheets is what they're called. And the term cascading, they call it cascading because with style sheets, you have rules. You have rules, this is that color, this is that wide, or whatever. Well, with cascading style sheets, the computer starts at the top and reads all the rules. And the last rule is the rule that matters. It's almost like if you are going into some type of a government agency and there's a person at the door, he lets you go through, you go to the next filter, next filter, next filter. It's the last filter that's going to really make the difference. That might not be a good analogy. You might think of it almost as a waterfall, changing colors that, the last part of the waterfall is really, with a new color in it, is really going to, determine the color. So that's why they call it cascading. So those are the things I wanted to go over. And like I said, we're using Drupal Gardens rather than Drupal. So Drupal Gardens is kind of like Drupal Lite, but it's a great chance to get acquainted with the interface you'd be using if you were using regular Drupal. And you're kind of confined with the amount of interactivities or whatever you can. You're using the less lightened down version of Drupal when you're using Drupal Gardens. So you don't have all the features you'd have, even as far as themes and things like that are concerned. So that's what I want to talk about today, and I think I went over everything. Thanks. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Any questions about this program can be addressed to Kevin at digitalmediauniversity.us.